Emma didn't plan to kiss anyone that night, especially not a stranger. The city was dressed in late autumn rain, the kind that made streetlights glow like melted gold and turned sidewalks into mirrors. Emma stood outside a small jazz lounge, clutching the strap of her purse with fingers that wouldn't stop trembling. She told herself she was only here because her friend had insisted she needed one normal night. No drama, no memories, no reminders. But the moment she heard a familiar laugh behind her, her stomach tightened like a knot pulled too hard. "Emma," a voice said, smooth and smug. Of course you'd be here. She didn't have to turn around to know it was Aaron, her ex, the man who'd once made her feel chosen and safe and then slowly convinced her she was never enough without him. The kind of charm that felt like sunlight at first and then revealed itself as a spotlight meant to control where you stood. Emma did turn because she refused to be the kind of person who ran anymore. She faced him, chin lifted, shoulders squared. Aaron looked exactly the same, expensive coat, confident grin, a gaze that never asked permission. "I thought you stopped following me," she said. Aaron laughed softly. "Following? No, I'm just curious. You disappear for weeks, stop answering, and then you show up alone like you're trying to prove a point." "I'm not alone," Emma said before thinking. The lie slipped out fast, desperate and bright. Aaron's eyes flicked around. "Oh yeah, where's your new hero?" Emma's heart pounded. The lounge door opened and closed behind her as people drifted in and out, laughing, living. She didn't see anyone she knew. She didn't even see someone who looked safe enough to pretend with. Then she saw him. He stood a few feet away beneath the awning, partly shadowed like the night itself had decided to wear a suit. Tall, still unmistakably composed. His hair was dark, his face calm, and his eyes were an impossible, unsettling shade, like deep wine held up to a light. He wasn't looking at her like most strangers did. He wasn't scanning, judging, or ignoring. He was simply watching, as if he'd already read the whole room and decided where the danger was. Aaron stepped closer. "Emma. Don't make this weird." Something in Emma snapped, not in anger but in survival, the kind that grows quiet and sharp after you've been pushed too many times. She walked straight to the stranger, rose on her toes, and kissed him. It was meant to be quick, a performance, a shield, but the moment her lips touched his, everything shifted. His hand lifted, steady, gentle, and rested at her waist like it belonged there. Not possessive, not forceful, protective. His mouth was warm, surprisingly human, and the air around him carried a faint scent like rain on stone. For a heartbeat, Emma forgot Aaron existed. She forgot the street. She forgot the panic. She pulled back, breath shaking. The stranger didn't look surprised. He didn't look angry. He looked amused, but in a quiet way, like he'd just been handed a puzzle and already knew the answer. Aaron made a disgusted sound. "Wow, so that's what we're doing now, random guys outside bars." The stranger finally turned his gaze to Aaron, and the temperature seemed to drop by a degree. "Leave," he said. It wasn't shouted, it wasn't dramatic, but the word landed heavy like a door slamming in a silent room. Aaron scoffed. "Who are you supposed to be?" The stranger's eyes didn't blink. "Someone you don't want to test." Aaron stared, and for the first time his smile faltered. Something passed over his face, uncertainty, then irritation. He tried to cover it with a laugh. "This is pathetic," Aaron muttered, backing away. "Have fun, Emma. Call me when you're done pretending." He turned and disappeared into the rain. Emma exhaled, her knees suddenly weak. She stepped back from the stranger, cheeks burning. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly. I panicked. He wouldn't leave me alone and it worked," the stranger replied. His voice was low, controlled. American accent clean, refined, like he chose words carefully. Emma hugged her coat tighter. "Still. I shouldn't have dragged you into it." He studied her for a long moment, then said, "Are you safe now?" The question struck her more than anything else. Not "who was that?" Not "why did you do that?" Not "what's your problem?" "Are you safe now?" Emma swallowed. "I think so." The stranger nodded once. "Good." He started to turn away like this was over. Emma surprised herself by reaching out and lightly touching his sleeve. The fabric was expensive, smooth, and strangely cold, like it had never absorbed warmth. "Wait," she said. "Can I at least thank you or tell you my name?" "I'm Emma." He looked down at her hand, then back to her face. "Emma," he repeated as if tasting it. She let go, suddenly self-conscious. "And you are?" There was a pause, just long enough to feel like he was deciding whether honesty was safe. "Adrian," he said at last. "Adrian," Emma echoed. "Okay, Adrian. If you're going inside, I could buy you a coffee or something, as a thank you." He glanced toward the lounge. "Coffee," he said like it was a concept from another life. Emma tried to smile. "Or tea. Or dessert, or literally anything that doesn't involve me kissing strangers without permission." A subtle curve touched his lips. "Dessert then." Inside, the lounge was warm and soft, filled with the hush of conversation and the lazy stretch of saxophone. Emma slid into a booth near the corner and Adrian sat opposite her, posture perfectly still, too still for someone in a crowded place. People passed by but no one bumped him. Somehow the space around him stayed clear. Emma ordered cheesecake and hot chocolate. Adrian didn't order anything. "You're not hungry?" she asked. "I don't eat much," he replied. Emma nodded, pretending it wasn't weird. Plenty of people had odd habits, but as the minutes passed she noticed other details. He never checked a phone, he didn't look at the stage, he didn't fidget. He seemed present in a way most people were, like he lived in the moment because he had learned the hard way how rare moments were. "So," Emma said, trying to make conversation. "Do you live around here?" "Yes," Adrian said. "Do you come here often?" "No," Emma laughed softly. "Okay, you're not a small talk person." Adrian's gaze lifted. "I prefer truth." That should have felt cold, but it didn't. It felt safe, like a promise there would be no manipulation hidden behind charm. Emma hesitated, then said quietly, "Truth is, my ex has been showing up everywhere. I blocked him. I told him to stop. He doesn't listen." Adrian's expression didn't change much, but something dark moved behind his eyes. Not anger exactly, something older, colder, protective but dangerous. "He believes he owns you," Adrian said. Emma's stomach sank because it was true. "Yeah," Adrian leaned back slightly. "He doesn't." The simplicity of that sentence made Emma's throat tighten. It should have been obvious, but when you've been told the opposite for long enough, your mind starts to accept the lie like air. Emma stared down at her cup. "I used to be confident." Before him, Adrian's voice softened. "Confidence doesn't disappear, it gets buried." Emma looked up. "What do you know about that?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, then said, "More than I want to." The band played on, people laughed, somewhere glasses clinked. And yet Emma felt like she was sitting across from something that didn't belong to the ordinary world. "Adrian," she said carefully, "can I ask you something weird?" "Yes." "Were you scared of Aaron?" Adrian's lips pressed together. "No," Emma nodded slowly. "You didn't act like it." Adrian watched her like he was weighing what she could handle. "Emma," he said, "your fear was louder than he was." That sentence landed in her chest like a bell. Her fear was louder than he was. She realized Aaron had fed on that fear for years. He didn't need to be physically violent to control her. He used guilt, pressure, and the constant suggestion that she'd never find anyone who understood her the way he did. And tonight she'd kissed a stranger not because she was reckless, but because her mind had been trained to look for exits instead of boundaries. Emma pushed her dessert around with her fork. "I don't want to be scared of him anymore." "You won't be," Adrian said. She should have questioned how he could say that with such certainty, but the calm in his voice steadied her. After the lounge, Adrian walked her to her car. The rain had eased into a light mist and the city smelled clean again. Emma paused beside the driver's door. "Thank you for helping." Adrian looked down the street, then back at her. "He will try again," he said. Emma's stomach tightened. "Probably. Not tonight," Adrian said. Emma tried to joke. "Are you going to stand outside my apartment like a security guard?" Adrian's eyes flicked to her, unreadable. "If necessary." Something about the way he said it made her laugh, but it came out shaky. "Okay," she said. "Well. Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Emma." She got in, locked the doors, and watched him in the rearview mirror as she drove away. He didn't move. He simply stood there under the streetlight, still as a statue, until she turned the corner and he vanished from view. Over the next week, Emma tried to get him out of her mind. She failed. She told herself it was just the adrenaline of escaping Aaron, that her brain had latched onto Adrian as a symbol of safety. But late at night, she remembered his voice, his eyes. The way he'd said, "He doesn't own you," like it was a law of nature. She returned to the lounge on Friday, half hoping it would be empty so she could stop embarrassing herself. Adrian was there. He sat in the same corner booth as if time didn't touch him. He looked up as she approached, not surprised at all. Emma slid into the seat across from him, trying to act casual while her heart sprinted. "Do you just live here now?" "No," Adrian said. "I waited." Emma blinked. "For me?" "Yes," her breath caught. That one word carried something she wasn't ready for: attention, intention. Not the loud, needy kind Aaron used. This was quieter, heavier. Emma forced herself to be honest. "I kept thinking about you." Adrian's gaze softened. "And I kept thinking about the fear in your eyes." Emma's mouth went dry. "That's not exactly romantic." "It is," Adrian said, "because it made me want to remove it." Emma didn't know how to respond to that. It sounded like a line from a dark fairy tale. And yet part of her wanted to believe in it, not because she needed saving, but because she needed proof that kindness could be strong. They talked that night. Real conversation, not small talk. Emma told him she worked in graphic design, that she'd always wanted to illustrate a children's book. That she loved rainy weather until Aaron used it as an excuse to show up at her door because he was worried. Adrian listened like every detail mattered. Adrian told her less. He said he owned a private estate outside the city, that he invested in old businesses, that he avoided crowds. He didn't mention family, he didn't mention friends. When Emma asked why, he said, "Because people disappear when they get too close to me." Emma tried to laugh it off, but something in his face said he meant it. As weeks passed, Adrian became a strange kind of constant. He didn't text all day, he didn't demand to know where she was, he didn't guilt her into giving him her time. When he asked to see her, it was always an invitation, never an expectation. And that was the first lesson Emma learned from him. If someone truly cares, they won't try to shrink your world to fit their comfort. They will expand it so you can breathe. Still, shadows followed. Erin started calling from different numbers, leaving gifts at her door, sending messages that swung between apologies and accusations. Emma didn't respond, she saved the messages. She told her best friend, she kept her location shared, she started documenting everything. That was her second lesson, one she'd once been too ashamed to accept. Love doesn't require you to handle harm alone. Asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. One night, Emma left work late. The parking lot was mostly empty, the sky dark and heavy. She heard footsteps behind her and froze. "Emma," Erin's voice said, sweet like poison. She turned, keys clenched between her fingers. Erin stepped into the glow of the lot light, hands in his pockets, smiling like they were old friends. "You're really going to pretend I don't exist forever?" Emma's mouth went dry. "You need to leave," Erin sighed. "I would, but then I think about you with that guy, and it makes me realize you're doing this to hurt me." Emma felt anger flash, clean and sharp. "This isn't about you," Erin's smile thinned. "Everything about you is about me, you just don't know it." He took a step forward, Emma stepped back. "Don't come closer." Erin ignored her, eyes narrowed. "You always act tough when you're scared." Then, from the darkness at the edge of the parking lot, a familiar voice spoke. She said, "Don't come closer." Adrian stepped into the light. Erin's face shifted, confusion, then irritation. "Oh, look." The hero, Adrian, didn't look at Emma, but she felt his presence like a wall at her side. Calm, steady, dangerous in a way Erin could sense without understanding. Erin scoffed, "What are you?" "Her new bodyguard." Adrian's eyes were darker tonight, his voice was low. "No," Emma swallowed. Adrian finally glanced at her. "Go to your car," he said gently. Emma's heart hammered. "No. I'm not leaving you, you're not leaving me," Adrian said. "You're choosing yourself." Something about that unlocked her feet. She moved toward her car, hands shaking, and got inside. She didn't drive off, she couldn't. Through the windshield, she saw Erin speak. She saw Adrian stand still like a statue carved from midnight, and then she saw Erin flinch. Like he'd heard something that turned his blood cold. Erin backed away, his face pale. For once, he looked afraid. He left fast, too fast for someone who'd walked in with confidence. Emma got out of the car, breath frantic. "What did you do?" Adrian turned toward her, and the lot light hit his eyes. They weren't just dark. They were glowing faintly, an unnatural shimmer like embers under glass. Emma's stomach dropped. "Adrian, what are you?" His jaw tightened. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. "Tell me the truth," Emma whispered. "You said you prefer truth." Adrian was silent for a long moment, then he said, "I'm not human." Emma stared at him, unable to move. Her mind scrambled for logic, for explanations, but her body, her instincts felt something ancient in him that no lie could fully hide. "What does that mean?" she asked, voice barely there. Adrian's gaze didn't waver. "It means I have lived longer than I should. It means my world is not kind. It means I can protect you from him, but I might bring other dangers." Emma's throat tightened. "Are you a vampire?" Adrian didn't smile. "Yes." The word hung in the air, heavy as thunder. Emma took a shaky breath. She expected her fear to roar back, to drown her. But instead, something else rose, anger at herself for how normalized Erin's cruelty had become compared to how shocking this felt. She looked at Adrian, really looked. The control, the stillness. The coldness of his sleeve, the way he didn't eat, the way he spoke of people disappearing, it all fit. "Are you going to hurt me?" she asked. Adrian's voice softened, and in it was something almost painful. "Never." Emma's eyes burned. "Why did you help me?" Adrian looked away, like the honesty cost him. "Because you were trapped," he said, "and I know what it is to be trapped." Emma swallowed hard. "By what?" Adrian's expression tightened. "By myself." That night, Adrian didn't touch her. He didn't step closer, he gave her space like space was sacred. He offered to take her home. Emma declined, choosing to drive herself. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she needed to prove to herself she could still steer her own life. In her apartment, she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone. Part of her wanted to run from Adrian. The word vampire brought 1,000 horror stories to mind: blood, control, darkness. But Adrian hadn't controlled her. He hadn't pressured her. He hadn't used her fear as leverage. Erin had done that, and he was completely human. Emma thought about a truth she'd avoided for years. Monsters aren't always supernatural. Sometimes they're simply people who choose power over love. And sometimes, someone with darkness in them chooses restraint, kindness, and honor, and that choice matters. The next day, Imam met Adrian in a public park in daylight, partly as a test. He stood under a large oak tree, shaded by leaves, not flinching from the sun, but he stayed in shadow like light was something he tolerated rather than enjoyed. Imam crossed her arms. So, vampire rules, you burn in sunlight. Adrian's mouth twitched, not like the stories. Can you read minds? No. Can you force people to do things? There was a pause. Adrian's eyes sharpened. I can influence if I choose to. Imam's chest tightened. Have you influenced me? Adrian looked genuinely offended. No. Imam searched his face. Promise, I promise, he said, and the certainty in his voice made it feel like a vow carved into stone. Imam exhaled slowly. Okay. Adrian's gaze softened. You should be afraid of me. Imam shook her head. No, I should be aware there's a difference. Adrian watched her like he was seeing something rare. Most people confuse fear with wisdom, he said. Imam nodded. I did for a long time. They walked through the park, slow and careful. Imam asked him questions, and he answered honestly, even when the answers made him look less heroic. He told her he wasn't just a vampire. He was the leader of his kind, bound by ancient rules, feared by enemies who wanted his power. A king not by crown and ceremony, but by the weight of responsibility and violence he worked every day to restrain. The ruthless vampire king, Imam murmured, half to herself, trying to imagine him as a headline. Adrian's eyes flicked to her. That's what they call me. Imam swallowed. Are you ruthless? Adrian's gaze held hers. To threats, he said, not to the innocent. Imam thought of Aaron again, how he'd painted himself as the victim every time she tried to leave. How he'd used softness as a disguise for control. I've met ruthless men, Imam said quietly. They weren't vampires. Adrian didn't respond, but something in his face shifted, like her words had struck a place he'd kept locked. Over the next month, Imam's life changed in small, real ways. She filed a formal complaint about Aaron's harassment. She spoke to building security. She told her manager at work. She stopped letting shame isolate her. And Adrian stayed near, not hovering, not claiming her, just available. Sometimes he'd drop off a book he thought she'd like. Sometimes he'd sit on her balcony at night, silent, listening to the city like it was an old song. Sometimes he'd simply ask, "How are you today?" and wait long enough for the real answer. Imam started to sleep better. She started to draw again, filling sketchbooks with characters and worlds she'd abandoned while she was trying to survive Aaron. One evening, Adrian watched her sketch at her kitchen table. The overhead light cast soft shadows on his face. You used to want to illustrate a children's book, Adrian said. Imam blinked. I told you that once. I remember everything you say, he replied, her cheeks warmed. That's either sweet or terrifying. Both can be true, Adrian said. Imam put down her pencil. Adrian, why haven't you kissed me again? Adrian's gaze lifted slowly. Because the first time wasn't consent, he said, and I won't take what isn't offered freely. The words hit Imam hard. Not because she hadn't known it, but because no one had ever said it to her that clearly, that respectfully. Aaron used to act like her no was a challenge, like her hesitation was a flaw to overcome. Imam stood, walked around the table, and stopped in front of Adrian. I'm offering, she whispered. Adrian didn't move. Be sure. Imam took a breath. She felt fear, yes, but not the fear of being controlled. This was the fear of stepping into something unknown while staying true to herself. I'm sure, she said. Adrian rose slowly, like he was giving her time to change her mind. He lifted a hand and touched her cheek with the back of his fingers, cool, careful, reverent. Then he kissed her. This kiss wasn't an escape, it was a choice. And in that choice, Imam felt something she hadn't felt in years, her own power returning, not borrowed from anyone else. Still, safety wasn't a fairy tale. Aaron didn't vanish because she found someone new. In fact, that's when he escalated. One night, Imam came home to find a note taped to her door. You think he can protect you? You don't even know who you're dealing with. Her hands shook as she read it. Her old panic tried to rise, familiar and fast, but she didn't crumble. She took a photo of the note. She called the police. She called her friend to come over. She called Adrian last. When Adrian arrived, his presence filled the room like a storm held behind a wall. He read the note, and for a moment the air felt colder. Imam touched his wrist. Don't, she said quietly. Adrian's gaze snapped to hers. He is threatening you. I know, Imam replied. But I need you to hear me. I don't want you to become a monster in my name. Something in Adrian's expression broke, just slightly, like her words reached the part of him that feared he couldn't be good. Imam swallowed. I want protection, she said, not revenge. Adrian's jaw tightened. He looked away, breathing slowly as if he had to remember how to be calm. When he looked back, his voice was controlled. Then I will do it your way. That was the third lesson Imam learned, and maybe the deepest. Real love doesn't just protect you from harm, it protects your values too. It will not demand you sacrifice your soul to feel safe. They made a plan, cameras, legal steps, documenting everything. Emma changed her routine, friends checked in. Adrian remained nearby, always in the shadows, always watching but never interfering with her choices. Aaron tried one last time. It happened outside the lounge, the same place where it had begun. The irony didn't escape Emma. She stepped out into the night and saw Aaron waiting across the street, face hard, eyes bright with obsession. Emma didn't run. Adrian appeared beside her without warning, like he'd stepped out of the dark itself. Aaron called out, "So it's true, huh? You found a freak who likes playing hero." Emma's heart hammered, but she walked forward a few steps, putting herself between them. "Stop," she said, her voice shook but it didn't break. "This ends now," Aaron sneered. "You don't get to decide that." "Yes," Emma said and surprised herself with the force of it. "I do." She held up her phone. "You're being recorded, there are cameras. There's a restraining order in process, and there's a police report for every message you've sent. If you come near me again, you'll be arrested." Aaron's face twitched. "You're bluffing," Emma lifted her chin. "Try me." For a moment, Aaron looked like he might lunge just to prove he still could. Then Adrian spoke, quiet, deadly calm. "She isn't bluffing," Adrian said, "and you should understand something." Aaron's eyes flicked to Adrian, and the streetlight caught Adrian's gaze, dark, ancient, and human. "If you cross this line again," Adrian continued, "there won't be a second warning." Emma's breath caught, not because of the threat, but because Adrian had done it exactly the way she asked. No violence, no spectacle, just clarity. Aaron's confidence cracked. He took a step back. For the first time, he looked at Emma like she wasn't his possession. Like she was a person he could not bend anymore. He spat on the ground, muttered something ugly, and walked away. Emma stood in the rain, shaking. Adrian turned to her. "Are you all right?" Emma let out a broken laugh that turned into a shaky exhale. "I think I just got my life back." Adrian lifted his hand as if to touch her, then stopped, waiting. Emma stepped into him and wrapped her arms around his cold, steady frame. He hesitated only a second before holding her, carefully, like she was something precious and breakable and also powerful enough to be trusted. Later, when they sat in her apartment with the lights low and the city quiet outside, Emma looked at Adrian and asked, "Do you ever wish you were normal?" Adrian's gaze drifted to the window. "Normal is a story people tell to feel safe," he said. "Most humans are not normal, they're wounded, they're complicated, they're trying." Emma nodded slowly. "That's kind of comforting." Adrian looked back at her. "You are not broken, Emma," she swallowed. "Sometimes I feel like I am." Adrian's voice was steady. "You were hurt." "That is not the same." Emma felt tears rise, not from fear but from relief. "Why do you talk like you've been waiting a long time to say things like that?" Adrian's expression softened. "Because I have." He told her more that night, about the weight of being a king, about the old rules that demanded cruelty. About the moments he'd chosen restraint, even when it would have been easier to become the monster everyone already believed he was. "I used to think kindness made me weak," Adrian admitted quietly. "Then I met someone who survived cruelty and still chose to be kind, and I realized kindness is not weakness. It is courage." Emma looked down at her hands, hands that had shaken, hands that had drawn worlds, hands that had once apologized for existing too loudly. "I'm not sure I'm kind," she whispered. "Sometimes I'm just tired." Adrian's gaze held hers. Tired people can still be brave. In the weeks that followed, life didn't become perfect. There were court dates, there were hard nights. There were moments when Emma's fear returned like a wave and she had to breathe through it. But now she had tools, support, evidence, boundaries. And a love that didn't demand she disappear to keep someone else comfortable. She started working on her children's book. It was about a girl who got lost in a storm and met a guardian made of night. Not a savior who carried her without permission, but a companion who walked beside her until she remembered her own strength. Adrian read the drafts quietly, his expression unreadable. When she finished the final page, she looked at him. "Do you think it's too cheesy?" Adrian's lips curved. "It's honest." Emma smiled. "You and your truth." "Truth," Adrian said, "is what sets people free." One night, months later, Emma stood on Adrian's estate for the first time, an old, beautiful place hidden behind iron gates and tall trees. It felt like stepping into a legend. "You really live here?" she asked. Adrian nodded. "Yes." Emma looked around. "It's lonely." Adrian's gaze lingered on her. It was. They walked through long hallways lined with paintings of faces that looked like they carried centuries in their eyes. Emma realized the world Adrian lived in had been built on secrecy and fear. And yet here he was, letting her in, not to control her but to trust her. They stopped at a balcony overlooking the dark forest. The sky above was clear, stars scattered like spilled salt. Emma leaned on the railing. "Adrian," she said softly, "I kissed you to escape my ex." "I know," Adrian replied. Emma swallowed. "And now I want to kiss you because I choose you. Not because I'm afraid." Adrian turned toward her. Then choose me, he said, voice quiet, but choose yourself first, always. Emma's chest tightened. That was the kind of love she never thought existed, the kind that didn't compete with her independence but honored it. She stepped closer. I am choosing myself, she whispered. And I'm choosing you too. This time when they kissed, it wasn't a frantic spark, it was steady, a promise that darkness didn't have to win, that power didn't have to corrupt. That someone could be feared by the world and still gentle with the person they loved. And in that, Emma finally understood the message her own life had been trying to teach her. You don't heal by finding someone to hide behind. You heal by learning you were never meant to be owned, and by choosing people who treat your freedom like something holy. Somewhere out in the city, Erin became a story Emma no longer replayed in her mind. A lesson, not a life sentence. And somewhere in the quiet of Adrian's world, beneath the stars, in the calm between heartbeats, Emma built a new story. Not one where she was rescued, one where she was respected. One where she was safe, and one where love, real love, felt like breathing again. Emma didn't plan to kiss anyone that night, especially not a stranger. The city wore late autumn rain like a veil. Streetlights bled warm gold into puddles, and the wind carried the smell of wet stone and car exhaust. Emma stood outside the Blue Marrow Lounge, shoulders tense beneath her coat, fingers locked around her purse strap as if it could keep her upright. Her best friend Leela had insisted she needed one normal night. Music, dessert, laughter, anything that wasn't therapy worksheets and blocked numbers. Emma had agreed, not because she believed it would fix her, but because she was tired of living like her life had already ended just because a relationship did. She was about to step inside when she heard the sound that always made her pulse turn icy, a familiar laugh, not loud, not wild, controlled, like it knew it belonged in every room. Emma, a voice said behind her, of course you'd be here. She closed her eyes for half a second, letting the wave pass through her instead of swallowing her whole, then she turned. Erin stood there like a polished nightmare, dark hair perfectly styled, a coat that cost too much, a smile that always looked friendly until you remembered it could cut. People used to tell Emma she was lucky. He was charming, successful, attentive. No one saw the way his attention became ownership. No one saw how his care slowly turned into control. I thought you stopped showing up where I am, Emma said, keeping her voice calm with effort. Erin tilted his head. Showing up, I'm just living my life. You're the one who vanished. I didn't vanish, she said. I left, there's a difference. Erin's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. You left without closure. Emma's hands went cold. I don't owe you closure. He stepped closer, lowering his voice like they were sharing a secret. You owe me respect after everything I did for you. Her throat constricted. That sentence, everything I did for you, was always the chain he tried to loop around her neck. Emma, Erin's tone softened, practiced. You look tired, let me take you home. She knew that trick. Offer help that was really a trap. If she accepted, he'd call it proof she still needed him. If she refused, he'd act wounded and angry. I'm not alone, Emma blurted without thinking. Erin's eyes flicked around, amused. Oh yeah, where's your new guy? Emma's mind raced. People drifted past, couples laughed, friends huddled under umbrellas, no one she knew, no one she could call. Then she saw him. A man stood beneath the lounge awning a few steps away, partly shadowed by the light above. Tall, still, wearing a dark suit like it was armor. His face was calm in a way that didn't feel casual, it felt controlled. As if he had learned long ago that emotion was a weapon and he refused to hand anyone the handle. But it was his eyes that made Emma pause, deep, dark, and strangely luminous, like wine in a glass held to candlelight. He wasn't watching the street the way most people did, he was watching Erin. Emma didn't think, she moved. She walked straight up to the stranger, rose on her toes, and kissed him. It was meant to be quick, a performance, a shield. But the moment her lips touched his, the world narrowed. His hand came to her waist, steady, firm, and strangely gentle, not grabbing, not demanding, anchoring. His mouth was warm, and for one breathless second Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. She pulled back quickly, heart pounding, and looked up at him as if she might find anger or shock. Instead, his expression held a quiet, almost amused patience. Like he'd seen desperate people do desperate things before and didn't judge them for it. Erin made a sound of disgust. Seriously. That's your move? The stranger turned his head toward Erin without releasing Emma's waist. His gaze was calm. Leave, he said. It wasn't a shout, it was worse than a shout. It was a command spoken like a fact. Erin scoffed. Who are you supposed to be? The stranger didn't blink. Someone you don't want to test. Erin's smile twitched. His eyes narrowed as if he were trying to decide whether this was a bluff. But something in the stranger's presence, something ancient and heavy, made Erin hesitate. Erin recovered with a laugh that sounded forced. Fine, have your fun, Emma. You'll call me when you're done pretending. He backed away, still smiling but not with confidence. More like he was retreating from a dog he couldn't read. When Aaron disappeared into the rain, Emma's knees felt weak. She stepped away from the stranger, cheeks burning. I'm so sorry. I didn't he won't leave me alone, and I panicked. The stranger's gaze returned to her. It worked. Emma blinked. That doesn't make it okay. A small pause. Then he said, are you safe now? The question hit her harder than anything else. Not why did you do that, not what's wrong with you, not do you know how rude that was. Are you safe now? Emma swallowed. I think so. He nodded once. Good. He turned like he was going to walk away, like his part in the story was done. Emma surprised herself by reaching out and touching his sleeve. The fabric was expensive, smooth, and oddly cool. Wait, she said. At least let me thank you properly. I'm Emma. He looked down at her hand, then back to her face. Emma, he repeated quietly, as if committing it to memory. And you are? She asked, a pause like he weighed the cost of honesty. Adrian, he said. Adrian, she echoed. Can I buy you coffee? Or dessert, something, as a thank you. He looked past her into the lounge. Dessert, he said, as if the word belonged to a past life. Emma exhaled. Great dessert it is. And I promise not to randomly kiss you again. His lips curved faintly. We'll see. Inside, the lounge glowed with amber light. A saxophone slid through the air like smoke. Conversations were low and warm. Emma chose a corner booth, trying to settle her nerves. She ordered cheesecake and hot chocolate. Adrian ordered nothing, simply sitting with his hands folded like he belonged in a different century. You're not hungry? Emma asked. I don't eat often, he replied. It was odd, but Emma had learned not to push people. Aaron used to push. Aaron used to demand explanations. She didn't want to become that kind of person. So, Emma said, searching for normal conversation, do you live around here? Yes. Do you come here a lot? No, Emma laughed softly. Okay. You're not really a small talk person. Adrian's gaze lifted. I prefer truth. Something in his tone made Emma sit straighter. Truth, that word had become complicated in her life. Aaron used truth like a weapon, twisting it, rewriting it, but Adrian spoke it like a boundary. Emma took a sip of hot chocolate. Truth is, my ex has been showing up everywhere. I blocked him. I told him to stop. He doesn't listen. Adrian's expression stayed calm, but his eyes darkened slightly like clouds thickening before a storm. He believes he owns you, Adrian said. Emma's stomach sank. Yeah, he doesn't, Adrian replied. Those two words sounded simple, but to Emma they felt revolutionary. She stared down at her spoon. I used to be confident, she admitted. Before him, Adrian's voice was quiet. Confidence doesn't disappear, it gets buried. Emma looked up. What do you know about that? A pause. More than I want to. For the next hour, conversation moved in careful circles. Emma told him she worked in graphic design, that she liked bookstores more than clubs, that she used to draw constantly before her relationship took up all her energy. Adrian listened like her words mattered, like she mattered. And that, more than his looks, more than his calm, was what unsettled her, because it felt like the opposite of Aaron's attention. Aaron listened to collect information. Adrian listened to understand. When they left the lounge, the rain had thinned to mist. Adrian walked her to her car. He didn't try to hold her hand. He didn't angle for another kiss. He didn't ask invasive questions. At the driver's door, Emma hesitated. Thank you, she said again, for stepping in. Adrian's gaze flicked down the street. He will try again, he said. Emma's throat tightened. I know, not tonight, Adrian said, with such certainty it sounded like a promise. Emma tried to joke. Are you going to stand outside my apartment like a security guard? Adrian's face remained serious. If needed, she laughed, but it came out shaky. Okay. Well, good night, Adrian. Good night, Emma. She drove away, watching him in the mirror. He stood under the streetlight, still as a statue, until she turned the corner. For days, Emma told herself it was a one-time thing, but on Friday her feet carried her back to the lounge. Adrian was there in the same corner booth as if he'd been waiting. Emma slid into the seat across from him, trying to act casual. Do you just appear when I'm stressed? No, Adrian said. I waited. Her heart stuttered. For me? Yes, Emma stared. The intensity of that single word should have frightened her, but it didn't because it wasn't demanding, it was honest. I kept thinking about you, Emma admitted. Adrian's gaze softened slightly. And I kept thinking about the fear in your eyes. Emma's throat tightened. Not the most romantic thing to say. It is, Adrian replied, because it made me want to remove it. They met again the following week, and the week after that. Slowly, Emma realized Adrian didn't pull her into his world. He simply stood beside her in hers. He didn't try to replace her friends, didn't demand her weekends, didn't guilt her when she needed space. And in that gentle consistency, something in Emma began to unclench. One night she told Leela about him. A stranger you kissed to escape Aaron? Leela asked, eyes wide. Emma groaned. When you say it like that I sound unwell. Leela studied her face. Do you feel safe with him? Emma hesitated, then nodded. Strangely, yes. Leela leaned back. Then be careful, but don't sabotage it just because it's unfamiliar. Sometimes healthy feels boring when you're used to chaos. Emma swallowed. It doesn't feel boring, it feels quiet. Quiet is good, Leela said. Quiet is where you finally hear yourself again. Emma carried that line with her. Quiet is where you finally hear yourself again, but quiet didn't mean nothing happened. Aaron escalated. He called from new numbers, left voicemails swinging between apologies and anger, dropped off flowers at her door with notes that read like threats dressed as love. Emma saved everything, screenshots. Photos, dates, times, she didn't respond. That was a new kind of strength, when she had to practice like learning a language. The first time Aaron showed up at her workplace, Emma's hands shook so badly she could barely hold her ID badge. But she didn't go outside to talk. She told security. She called Leela, she documented it. When Adrian heard, his jaw tightened. I can stop him, Adrian said. Emma looked up at him. How? Adrian's eyes were dark, unreadable. In ways you wouldn't like. Something in his tone made Emma's stomach dip. Adrian, she said carefully, what are you? The question hung between them, a long pause. Then Adrian said, not human. Emma's breath caught. Is this a joke? Adrian didn't smile. No, Emma's mind raced. What does that mean? Adrian's voice was calm, but it carried weight. It means I'm dangerous. It means I can protect you from Aaron. And it means I might bring other dangers into your life simply by being near you. Emma's throat went dry. Are you saying you're a vampire? Adrian's eyes held hers. Yes. The word sounded impossible in the cozy lounge, surrounded by music and desserts and normal people. Emma stared at him, waiting for the fear to crush her, but the fear that rose wasn't about fangs, it was about trust. Have you been lying to me? She asked. I have been careful, Adrian said. Not deceptive. Emma let out a shaky breath. Can you control people? I can influence, he admitted, if I choose to. Emma's skin prickled. Have you influenced me? Adrian's expression tightened. No, promise, Emma said, voice trembling. I promise, Adrian replied, and the certainty in his voice sounded like an oath. Emma sat back, processing. Then she surprised herself by saying, okay. Adrian's gaze narrowed slightly. Okay, Emma swallowed. You haven't tried to control me. Aaron did. And he's human. Adrian didn't speak for a moment, then he said quietly, you should be afraid of me. Emma shook her head. No, I should be aware. There's a difference. Something shifted behind Adrian's eyes, something like respect. From that night forward, Emma set rules. They would meet in public places at first. She would ask questions and he would answer honestly. No disappearing without explanation, no secrets that affected her safety. Adrian agreed, not grudgingly, not with sarcasm. With genuine acceptance. And that became the next lesson Emma learned. A person who loves you won't punish you for having boundaries, they will honor them. As the weeks passed, Adrian revealed pieces of his truth. He wasn't just any vampire. He was a leader, what humans would call a king, though there were no crowns or castles in the fairy tale sense. There were networks, alliances, ancient laws, and enemies that lived in shadow. Some called him ruthless. Emma tested that word carefully, rolling it around in her mind like a stone. Are you ruthless? She asked him one night as they walked through a quiet park. Adrian didn't answer quickly. To threats, he said finally. Yes. And to people like me? Emma asked. His gaze softened. Never. Emma believed him, not because she was naive, but because she had learned to read control versus care. Aaron demanded access to her life. Adrian asked for permission. Aaron treated her fear like entertainment. Adrian treated it like a problem to solve without making her feel small. Still, Emma didn't romanticize Adrian's darkness. She saw it sometimes, like a storm behind glass. Once, outside her apartment, a man shouted at Emma for accidentally bumping into him. It was nothing, a brief moment of city irritation. But when Adrian stepped beside her, the man stopped mid-sentence, face draining of color, and walked away quickly without another word. Emma turned to Adrian, unsettled. What did you do? Adrian's voice was controlled. Nothing, but his eyes said I could have. That night, Emma sat across from him at her kitchen table. I don't want to be protected by violence, she said quietly. Adrian's gaze held hers. I will do it your way, he said. Emma's throat tightened. Even if it's harder, yes. And that became another lesson, maybe the deepest. Real love doesn't just protect you, it protects your values. Aaron didn't stop because Emma grew stronger. He stopped when consequences became real. Emma filed reports, built a paper trail, applied for a restraining order, told her manager and security at work, changed her routine. Installed a camera at her door. Leela helped. Even neighbors quietly offered support when they realized what was happening. Emma learned that community mattered. Predators thrive in silence. One evening, Emma came home to find a note taped to her door. You think he can protect you? You don't know who you're dealing with. Her hands shook as she photographed it for evidence. When Adrian arrived, the air in the room felt colder, like his presence pulled the temperature down. Emma held up the note. I need you to promise me something. Adrian's gaze was fixed on the paper like he wanted to burn it with his mind. What? No revenge, Emma said. No punishment, no hunting him, I want safety. I want an ending that doesn't turn me into someone I don't recognize. Adrian's jaw flexed. He looked away, breathing slowly, as if calm was something he had to choose on purpose. Then he looked back at her. Then I will give you safety, he said. Not revenge. Aaron tried one last time outside the Blue Marrow Lounge, like he wanted to reclaim the place where he thought he'd lost her. Emma stepped out into misty rain and saw him across the street waiting. Her body tried to go into old panic, but she didn't run. Adrian appeared beside her silent. Emma walked forward a few steps alone, phone already recording in her hand. This ends, she said clearly. Aaron laughed. You don't get to decide that. Yes, Emma replied, her voice shaking but steady. I do. She raised her phone. You're on camera, I have reports. A restraining order is in process. If you come near me again, you will be arrested. Aaron's smile faltered. You're bluffing. Emma met his eyes. Try me. He stared at her like he was seeing a stranger, because in a way he was. Adrian spoke from behind her, quiet, cold. She isn't bluffing. Aaron's gaze snapped to Adrian, and fear flickered across Aaron's face, quick and real. Emma didn't need Adrian to threaten violence. She needed Aaron to understand this. She was not alone, and she was not silent anymore. Aaron cursed under his breath and backed away. For the first time, he left without trying to negotiate. Emma stood trembling in the rain after he vanished. Adrian turned to her. Are you all right? Emma let out a broken laugh. I think I just got my life back. Adrian lifted a hand toward her cheek, then stopped, waiting for permission like he always did. Emma stepped into him and hugged him tightly. Adrian hesitated only a second before holding her gently, carefully, like she was not fragile but precious. Later, in Emma's apartment, they sat in the dim living room with a blanket over their legs and the city humming outside. Emma looked at Adrian. Do you ever wish you were normal? Adrian stared at the dark window. Normal is a story people tell, he said. Most people are wounded, most are trying. Emma nodded, swallowing. I'm trying. Adrian's gaze returned to her. And you're succeeding. Emma felt tears rise. I don't feel strong. Adrian's voice softened. Strength isn't loud, he said. Sometimes it looks like paperwork. Sometimes it looks like saying no and meaning it. Sometimes it looks like asking for help. Emma whispered, I'm scared sometimes. Adrian replied, courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that fear will not lead. Silence settled, gentle healing. Emma reached for his hand. His skin was cool but steady. Adrian, she said quietly, the first time I kissed you, it was to escape. I know, he said, and you let me. Adrian's eyes were intent. You needed a door. Emma swallowed. Why didn't you take advantage? Adrian's expression tightened with something like pain. Because I know what it is to be taken from, he said. And I will never be that kind of monster. Emma's chest ached. People call you ruthless. Adrian's gaze darkened. They have reasons. Emma held his hand tighter. Then choose to be different with me. Adrian's voice was low. I already have. Emma leaned closer, stopping just inches away. May I kiss you? She asked softly. Adrian's eyes searched hers. Be sure, I'm sure, she whispered. This kiss was not frantic. It was a promise made slowly, carefully, built on consent and choice. Emma felt something inside her settle, like she wasn't borrowing strength from Adrian but discovering her own again with him beside her. In the months that followed, Emma poured her healing into art. She started sketching again, pages of characters, scenes, and soft, brave endings. She began a children's book about a girl who got lost in a storm and met a guardian made of night. Not a savior who carried her away, but a companion who walked beside her until she remembered the way home. Adrian read every draft without interruption. When she finished the last page, she looked at him nervously. Is it too much? Adrian's lips curved faintly. It's honest, he said. Emma exhaled. That's your favorite word. It saves lives, Adrian replied. Eventually, Emma visited Adrian's estate outside the city, an old, quiet place wrapped in trees and iron gates. It wasn't scary the way she expected. It felt lonely, like a museum built for one person. This is where you live, she asked, staring at high ceilings and dark hallways lined with paintings of faces that looked like they'd watched centuries pass.